Phil, it's not like Congress can't agree on anything. They agreed to condemn the racist language of Steve King. He's already been stripped of his committee assignments. I want to play for you a clip from a radio interview he gave tonight. We'll talk about it on the other side.
We reached a place here now where I'm pretty comfortable with this. I mean, I'm at peace in my soul with this, and I'm confident that what I have done has been true and right and just and honest. And a bunch of those folks over there, I don't condemn anybody, especially not to eternity, but I'm very comfortable standing before God and answering to all of this.
Phil, he is barely hanging on to a congressional seat from Iowa. Is this story over yet, you think?
I don't think it is, Brian. He has been condemned this week over those racist remarks, but that is not the first time that Congressman King has made racist remarks like this. I've been covering him for years, including on the campaign trail in Iowa. He is always a flamboyant speaker, and, he has made racist comments before, and Republican leaders have sort of turned the other way when he's done so. This is the first time they're really confronting it head on. Condemning him in the Congress today. We'll see if there's going to be any more disciplinary action, if perhaps there's any sort of move to seriously pressure him to resign or somehow expel him. I'm also curious to see, frankly, when President Trump is going to weigh in on this. He was actually asked earlier this week about these comments, and he claimed to not be aware of them, despite all the many hours we know he watches cable television. He somehow missed all the reporting on Congressman King's remarks, but he probably has not missed it now. So we'll see what he has to say the next time he's asked.
Donna, to Phil's point, Steve King was Steve King when you were in the House with him. He's been Steve King, the same guy, for many years. Do you think this correctly can be converted into shining a brighter light on the president's choice of words and ideology?
Well, I think, there certainly is a link between the president and Steve King. I mean, there's really virtually no daylight between some of the remarks that the president has made and Steve King. And frankly, I don't think that the action that was taken today on the House floor, while a motion of disapproval, I think is, important. I think it's time for Steve King to leave the Congress. And this is not about a choice of free speech. Steve King can have his free speech outside of the Congress of the United States. He has brought real disrepute upon the Congress, impugned the Congress, and I think the Republican Party needs to cut him loose. Otherwise, it's like a cancer that continues to grow on the Republican Party. And the Des Moines Register today, in fact, called for his resignation. This is the first time that an Iowa Democrat has not, or an Iowa representative has not served on the Agriculture Committee, which is important to Iowa. He's not serving the citizens of his congressional district. I believe it's time for him to leave, and then he can have all the free speech he wants.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.